All right, so we're going to take a look at Module 3, Lesson 9. So the objective is we're going to simply add fractions, making like units numerically. So the first thing we do is we look at our denominators. We know we have 5 or fifths and we have 3 or thirds. We're going to skip count by 5s and by 3s to find our LCM, our lowest common multiple, which is going to ultimately turn into our LCD, our lowest common denominator. So let's go ahead and skip count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, and we can stop right there because we know when we skip count by 3s, it's going to be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So our lowest common denominator, our lowest common multiple would be 15. We know that eventually we're going to have to get to something that we will multiply and get 15. So we say, what times 5 gives us 15? So let's skip count. 5 times 1, 5 times 2, 5 times 3. So we know we're going to multiply by 3/3 here, and we're going to multiply and say, what times 3 gives us 15? 3 times 1, 3 times 2, 3 times 3, 3 times 4, 3 times 5. So we know it's 5. And if you notice, our denominators just switched places. So we had fifths and thirds. We multiplied our fifths by 3 over 3. 3 over 3 is equal to 1. So all we're really doing is multiplying by 1 to find the equivalent fraction. So when we do this and say 3 times 3 is 9, we know that 3/5 is equal to 9/15. Same thing here. 1 times 5 is 5. We know that 1/3 is equal to 5/15. So now we're going to just add our new equivalent fractions, and we say 9/15 plus 5/15 is equal to 14/15. Of course, we can add in our addition there, and now we have our first answer, and we know that that is simplified already, so we can't do anything else to that. That is finished. Let's take a look at B. So we know that if we were to skip count, we would come to 55, because we have 5 times 11 is 55. Let's go ahead and get our fraction situated. So we're not going to write our multiples of 5 and 11. We know that the lowest common multiple we're going to come to is 55. We're going to multiply by 11/11ths and multiply this by 5/5. In this case, we know that if we skip counting by 5s, we would have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. If we skip counting by 11s, we would have 11, 22, 33, 44, 55. So we know that that's our lowest common denominator in this case. So we didn't write them out. If you're using your multiplication chart at home, feel free to use that chart, and you can see that that would be our LCM, our lowest common multiple, and now it's going to be our common denominator, our lowest common denominator. All right, so now we're just going to multiply across, say, well, 3 times 11 is 33. 1 times 5 is 5. 33 plus 5 is 38 55s. 38 55s. That would be our answer. So let's go ahead and take a look at C here. If I'm looking at C, I see my denominators are 9 and 6. When I look at my multiples of 9 and 6, I know that they both come to 36. So let's list our multiples of 9. We have, let's put it over here on the sides. We have 9, 18, 27, 36. And if we did 6, we would do 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and 36. So we notice that we have our first common multiple we come to is 36. 1, 2, 3, 4. 9 times 4 is 36, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 6 is 36. So now I know that 2/9 is equal to, we just said 1, 2, 3, 4. 2/9 is equal to 8 over 36. And also 5, 6 would be equal to blank 36. I can say, well, 6 times what equals 36? I know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 6, I'm going to multiply 5 times 6 and come up with my answer of 30. So now I have 38, 36. I'm going to add these two together. I have 8 plus 30, and that gives me 38 over 36. Now, of course, we could leave the answer like this because the directions didn't ask us to simplify or turn our improper fractions to mixed numbers, but just for the time being, we'll go ahead and simplify, change our improper fraction to a mixed number rather. So we know that we can get one set of 36 out of 38. So 38 divided by 36 is 1. There's going to be 2 36s remaining. And even with this, I know that these are both even numbers, so I can divide 2 by 2. So this will give me 1. Then I can divide 36 by 2, and I will get 18. So as the answer is 1 and 1/18. That's my final answer, 1 and 1/18. Next, for D, we have 3 add-ins. We have 2/5 plus 1/4 plus 1/10. So I know that all of these numbers, 5, 4, and 10, all come to eventually 20 if you skip count. So let's list our multiples out. So if I have my multiples of 5, it'll be 5, 10, 15, 20. Some people say, well, there's 10. Why can't you use 10? Think of your multiples of 4. If you multiply by 4, you get 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. You don't get a 10, so 10 is not on that list. Of course, 10 is going to be 10 and 20. The first multiple that I come to on all three lists, the common, the lowest, that means it's going to be the first one we come to when we're counting our multiples, starting at the actual number and counting up by multiples of that number. It's going to be lowest. Then it has to be common, meaning that it's going to be on all three lists, and it's going to be a multiple of all three. That's our LCM. Now we're going to use this LCM as what's called the LCD, our lowest common denominator. And in this case, we said our lowest common denominator is 20. So let's go ahead and write that in there. Now I have 2/5, 1/4, and 1/10. I'm going to add those up. I know that I'm going to have to multiply by some version of 1. It's going to be a fraction form of 1. Anything over itself is equal to 1. And when I do that, it's going to give me a denominator of 20. So now we can just ask ourselves, and it's going to be kind of tight right there, but we say 5 times what equals 20? Go to our multiples here. Well, 5 times 1 was 5, 5 times 2 was 10, 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 4. So I know that I'm going to have 4 over 4 because that's equal to 1. It's not going to change this 2/5. It's just going to give it its equivalent form. So now I say, well, 2 times 4 is 8. 2/5 is equal to 8/20. Same thing here. I know that this is going to be 5 over 5 because we just said 5 times 4. So now we're saying 4 times 5. 5 times 1 is equal to 5. That's 8/20 plus 5/20. And now I have to do the last one. We know that this number is going to be 2 over 2 to get our equivalent form of 1. And now 2 times 1 is 2. 8 plus 5 is 13, 14, 15/20 is going to be my final answer. But remember, we're going to simplify it. And I know that both of these numbers are divisible by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. Our final answer is 3/4. We're going to look at E through H next and do it a little bit different. We're going to show you a couple of other ways that may benefit your learning style. All right, so for E, we're going to change it up a little bit and format our problem slightly different. This is how we formatted our problems to match the curriculum. So they had the first fraction, and then we just multiplied it by the second denominator. And then we added the second fraction and multiplied it by the first denominator. Fairly simple, right? We know that we get 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 3 or 3 times 5 is 15. Plus 7 times 3 is 21. 5 times 3 is 15 again. So now we're going to add those. So now we have 1 plus 5 is 6 ones and 2 tens. And then we have our 15, it stays the same. And we're going to say that this is greater than 1, so we can take 15 of these 15s and get one whole. And you say, well, what's the difference between 26 and 15? You know that that's 1 1 and 1 10, 11 15ths. So that's our final answer, 1 and 11 15ths. All right, so let's take a look at our next problem here. So we have our fraction 5/8, and we're going to multiply it by our opposite denominator, which is 12. Then we're going to add that to our 7/12 and multiply it by, you guessed it, our eighths. So all we did was we took our first fraction and multiplied it by our second denominator, took our second fraction and multiplied it by our first denominator. If you notice, we have 5/8 multiplied by 12, 7/12 multiplied by 8. Let's go ahead and do the math. So now we have 5 times 12, 60. And then we have 8 times 12. We know 8 times 12 is 96. So we have, and 96 is our new unit. And let's see, when we add, we're going to come up with 96 is our unit here. Because remember, all we did was switch our 8 and our 12 around. So now we have 7 times 8, which is 56. Let's go ahead and add that up. We got 6 ones plus no ones equals 6 ones. And then we have 5 tens plus 6 tens equals 11 tens, or 110. And then we're going to divide that by 96. We have 116 over 96. So we know that 96 over 96 is equal to 1 whole. We can take out 96 of the 116 96 and have 1 whole. Let's see what will happen to our remainder. So let's subtract 116 minus 96. We get 0 ones. That's 11 tens minus 9 tens is 2 tens. So we're going to have 20 remaining over 96. Both of these numbers are even numbers, so they're divisible by 2. They are divisible by 4 as well, but let's go ahead and divide by 2. So we say 20 divided by 2 is going to be 10. And then 96 divided by 2 would be 48. And then we say, well, these two numbers are even as well, so they're divisible by 2. So this is going to be 5/24. And don't forget, we had a 1 down here, so our answer is going to be 1 and 5/24. That's the simplified version. If you just left it at 1 and 20/96, technically you would be correct. You just didn't simplify. And remember, our directions didn't ask us to simplify. So this will be your final answer right here, 1 and 5/24. All right, we're going to take it one step further and even do some cross multiplying here. So now we have a mixed number plus a fraction. We know that if we were to cross multiply here, let's look at this. We would say, let's move our whole number down here. We'll add that to whatever we have later on. Well, first we're going to take our two denominators and say 3 times 4 is what? We know that it's going to be 12ths. All right, now we have to say, well, 4 times 1. 4 times 1 is 4. I'm flowing this way. We're going to always start from the bottom and go up, and that's going to give us our direction. Doesn't really matter when we're adding fractions, but when we get into subtraction of fractions, that's very important. And then we say, well, let's look at our other numbers. We have 3 times 3 is 9. That's our 9 is going to go there. Following that arrow, we say, well, 4/12 plus 9/12 is equal to 13/12. 13/12 is equal to 1 whole, because I can take out 12/12 to get a 1 whole, and I will have 1/12 remaining. So 1/12 plus 1 is equal to 2 and 1/12. That's your final answer. Let's take a look at H here. So now, same thing, I'm just going to bring my whole down and say, if I cross multiply, I have 4 times 5 is flowing this way. And before I do that, let's multiply our fractions, our decimals here. When we multiply our decimals, we say 6 times 4 is 24. we're going to have 20/4, or 4 times 5, since we want to flow from the bottom up. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 6 times 1. Now, this is not my whole number 1. This is my numerator 1. Remember, my whole number 1 is already down here. We got rid of that. We're going to add that to the sum of our two fractions. So 6 times 1 is 6. Now I have 26. This is equal to 26 24ths, which I know is equal to 1 whole, because I can get 24 24ths to get 1 whole. Anything over itself equals 1, and 2 24ths. Well, I know that 2 24ths is equal to 1/12. So this would be equal to 1 and 1/12. When I add these two together, once again, I get 2 and 1/12. So these two had the same answer, even though they were different fractions. All right, so please just go ahead and ask me any questions in the comments. I will reply to your comments as soon as possible. Thank you and have a good day.